Commander Sarah Chun stared at the empty space where Earth used to be on her star charts. 50 years had passed since the Galactic Council threw humanity out of civilized space. 50 years since they blamed humans for the attack on Centauri Trade Hub. 50 years of running, hiding, and watching her people slowly die in the dark corners of the galaxy. The bridge of the Defiant was quiet except for the soft hum of old engines. Chun's crew of 40 men and women represented all that remained of Earth's once mighty space fleet. Most were gray-haired now, too old for this life, but too stubborn to give up. The younger ones had never seen Earth. They only knew stories of blue skies and green fields. "Commander," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "We're getting a signal from the Kepler mining colony. They need medical supplies again." Chun nodded. The human colonies scattered across the outer rim were always desperate for something. Food, medicine, fuel, hope. The Defiant carried what little they could find, trading with smugglers and pirates for scraps the galaxy's civilized worlds threw away. "Set course for Kepler," she ordered. "Best speed." As the ship turned toward the distant colony, Chief Engineer Rodriguez approached her command chair. His weathered face showed the strain of keeping their old ship running with spare parts and prayers. "Sarah, we're pushing these engines too hard," he said quietly. "If we don't find a proper shipyard soon, we'll be drifting." "I know, Miguel. But what choice do we have?" Chun replied. "The colonies need us." Rodriguez nodded sadly. Everyone on the ship knew they were fighting a losing battle. Each year, more human settlements went dark. Disease, starvation, and despair claimed lives that proper medical care could have saved. The galaxy had made it clear. Humans were not welcome. 2 days into their journey, Ensign Parker picked up something unusual. "Commander, I'm detecting a distress signal." "It's not human." Chun moved to the sensor station. The signal was weak but clear. Someone was in trouble, about 6 hours away from their current position. But as the sensors gathered more information, her heart sank. 12 Vorthic warships, reported Parker. "They're escorting what looks like a slave transport." The bridge fell silent. The Vorthic Empire controlled most of the galaxy's military forces. Their ships were newer, faster, and better armed than anything humans could field. 12 of them could destroy the Defiant without breaking formation. "The distress signal is coming from inside the transport," Parker continued. "Someone's trapped in there." Chun studied the tactical display. Whoever was sending that signal was probably already dead or would be soon. The smart thing to do was ignore it and continue to Kepler. Her crew needed to stay alive to help the colonies, but Chun remembered her father's words from when she was young. He had been a ship captain too, back when humans were still welcome in civilized space. "Sarah," he used to say, "we don't leave people behind. That's what makes us human." "Commander," Torres said carefully, "we can't take on 12 warships." "I know the odds," Chun replied. She looked around the bridge at her crew. These people trusted her with their lives. They had families in the colonies counting on them. One rescue attempt could end everything. One rescue attempt could end everything. "But there's someone in that transport who's sending a distress signal," she continued. "Someone who still has hope that help might come. How can we ignore that?" Rodriguez stepped forward. "Sarah, if we attack that convoy, we're all dead. The colonies will lose their only supply ship." Chun knew he was right. But she also knew that if humanity abandoned its principles to survive, what would be left worth saving? They were already living like ghosts, hiding in the dark spaces between stars. If they stopped helping others, they would become exactly what the Galactic Council said they were, a species too dangerous for civilization. "All hands to battle stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We have a rescue to attempt." The crew moved quickly despite their confusion. They trusted Chun, even when they didn't understand her orders. As the Defiant changed course toward the Vorthek convoy, she could feel the tension on the bridge. "Ma'am," asked Torres, "what's the plan?" Chun smiled grimly. "We do what humans do best. We act crazy enough that nobody sees us coming." The Defiant was an old Earth cruiser, built back when humans thought they would fight wars against other humans. Its design was ugly compared to the sleek Vorthek ships, but it was solid. More importantly, it was unpredictable. The aliens had studied human military tactics for 50 years, but they still didn't understand how humans thought. As they approached the convoy, Chun ordered all non-essential systems shut down. The ship would look like a piece of space junk drifting through the area. With luck, the Vorthek would ignore them until it was too late. "Weapons ready," reported Gunner Chief Adams. "But Commander, even if we surprise them, 12 ships." "I know," Chun said. "We're not trying to win a battle, Chief. We're trying to save whoever's in that transport." The distress signal grew stronger as they drifted closer. It was definitely coming from inside the slave ship. Chun wondered who could be desperate enough to keep broadcasting when capture meant certain death. "Enemy ships are maintaining formation," reported Parker. "They haven't detected us yet." Chun watched the tactical display. The Vorthek were confident, flying in a standard escort pattern that left the transport protected in the center. They probably couldn't imagine anyone being crazy enough to attack such a strong force. They were about to learn how crazy humans could be. "On my mark," Chun said quietly. "All power to engines and weapons. We're going to ram straight through their formation and hit that transport hard enough to crack it open." Her crew stared at her. Ramming attacks were considered barbaric by galactic standards. Civilized species fought clean battles, with energy weapons and elegant tactics. But humans had never been accused of being civilized. "Mark," Chun commanded. The Defiant roared to life and shot forward like a missile aimed at the heart of the convoy. The Vorthek fleet reacted exactly as Chun expected. Confusion first, then anger. Their perfect formation scattered as 12 warships turned to face the single human vessel charging toward them. Energy beams lit up space around the Defiant, but Chun had counted on their surprise, giving her a few precious seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "Keep us moving toward that transport." The old cruiser twisted and rolled as Rodriguez pushed the engines beyond their safety limits. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge, but the ship held together. Human engineering might have been primitive by galactic standards, but it was built to take punishment. "Direct hit on our port side," reported Adams as the ship shuddered. "Armor is holding." Chun gritted her teeth as another energy beam scorched across their hull. The Vorthek ships were faster and more maneuverable, but they fought like they expected their enemies to follow rules. They aimed for engines and weapons, trying to disable rather than destroy. It was the civilized way to fight. Humans had learned to fight differently during 50 years of exile. When every battle might be your last, you didn't worry about being civilized. "Ramming speed," Chun commanded. "All power to forward shields." The Defiant slammed into the slave transport like a hammer hitting glass. The alien ship's elegant hull cracked open, spilling air and debris into space. Emergency lights flashed as both vessels spun wildly from the impact. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, shouted Rodriguez. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal the breaches," Chun ordered. "Boarding teams, get ready." Lieutenant Torres led a squad of Marines toward the breach point where the two ships had connected. They wore old-style spacesuits that looked clumsy compared to modern gear, but they worked. The Marines had trained for this exact situation dozens of times, hoping they would never need to use their skills. The inside of the alien transport was chaos. Automated systems screamed warnings in the Vorthek language. Emergency power cast strange shadows as Torres and her team moved through corridors designed for beings much taller than humans. The ship's artificial gravity flickered on and off, making every step treacherous. They followed the distress signal deeper into the vessel, past rows of empty holding cells and through sections that looked like they had been abandoned for months. Whatever this ship normally carried, it was running light today. "Signals getting stronger," reported Corporal Kim over the radio. "Definitely coming from the forward section." Torres reached what looked like a command center. Banks of alien computers lined the walls, most of them dark or flickering with error messages. In the center of the room sat a single figure. She was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and silver hair that seemed to move on its own. Her clothing was torn and stained, but Torres could see it had once been elegant. Most striking were her eyes, which glowed with a soft inner light. "I am Zara 9 of the HFY," the figure said in perfect English. "I have been waiting for someone to answer my call." Torres stared. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the HFY, even humans living in exile. They had been the greatest warriors in galactic history, masters of both technology and combat. But they had been extinct for 300 years. "The HFY are gone," Torres said carefully. "Everyone knows that." Zara 9 smiled sadly. "Almost everyone. I am the last." Before Torres could respond, explosions echoed through the ship. The Vorthic warships were closing in, and the Defiant was running out of time. "We need to go," Torres said. "Can you move?" "I have been chained here for many years," Zara 9 replied, showing Torres the energy bonds around her wrists. "But yes, if you can free me, I can move." Torres used her plasma cutter to break the energy chains. As they fell away, something strange happened. The alien woman's eyes grew brighter, and Torres felt a sudden warmth in her mind, like a gentle touch. "Interesting," Zara 9 said. "Your species has potential." They ran back through the corridors as the ship shook around them. More explosions meant the Vorthic were probably boarding their own transport to stop the rescue. Torres pushed her team harder, knowing they had minutes at most before the enemy found them. They reached the breach point just as Chun's voice crackled over the radio. "All teams, return immediately. We have 8 warships closing fast." The jump back to the Defiant was terrifying. Both ships were still spinning slowly, and the gap between them kept changing. One by one, the Marines leaped across empty space, trusting their suits and training to keep them alive. Zara 9 moved with impossible grace. She seemed to barely touch the walls as she propelled herself through zero gravity, flowing like water through the chaotic space. When she reached the Defiant, she helped pull in the last Marine with strength that seemed far beyond her thin frame. "Seal the airlocks," Chun commanded as soon as everyone was aboard. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump." The old cruiser's engines roared as Rodriguez pushed them toward their maximum output. Space around them filled with energy beams as the Vorthic ships tried to stop their escape. The Defiant's armor glowed red-hot under the assault, but Chun had positioned them perfectly. The slave transport exploded between them and half the Vorthic fleet. The alien ship's reactor overloaded from the ramming damage, creating a brief star that blinded enemy sensors. In that moment of chaos, the Defiant disappeared into hyperspace. Chun found Zara 9 in the medical bay an hour later. Dr. Martinez was running scans while the alien woman sat patiently on an examination table. Her glowing eyes tracked every movement in the room with perfect awareness. "How is she, Doc?" Chun asked. "Physically, she's in remarkable condition considering what she's been through," Martinez replied. "But Captain, her biology is like nothing I've seen. Her nervous system is incredibly advanced." Zara 9 spoke quietly. "I am grateful for your rescue, Captain. But I must tell you something important. The Vorthic did not capture me by accident. They have been hunting my kind for 3 centuries, ever since they destroyed our homeworld. Chun pulled up a chair. Why? What were they afraid of? My people developed a way to share knowledge and experience directly from mind to mind, Zara 9 explained. We could pass our skills, our memories, our understanding to others instantly. Before we died out, we stored all of our knowledge in genetic sequences that could be transferred to compatible species. She looked directly at Chun. Your species is compatible, Captain. More than that, you are ideal. The Vorthik feared what would happen if the Kethver knowledge spread to other races. They destroyed us to prevent that. Chun felt a chill. And now you're free. Now I am free, Zara 9 agreed. And I have found a species that fights not for conquest or power, but to protect others. Your rescue of me proves that humanity is worthy of what my people preserved. Martinez looked between them. What exactly are you talking about? Zara 9 smiled, and for a moment her alien features looked almost human. I am talking about sharing 300 years of combat experience, tactical knowledge, and warrior training with people who will use it to protect the innocent. I am talking about giving humanity the tools to not just survive, but to change the galaxy. Chun stared at this strange woman who claimed to be the last of her kind. In her glowing eyes, she saw something that had been missing from the human colonies for 50 years. Hope. What do you need from us? Chun asked. Just volunteers, Zara 9 replied. People willing to let me share what the Kethver learned. But I warn you, Captain. Once you have our knowledge, the Vorthik will never let you rest. They will see you as the greatest threat to their control. Chun thought about the human colonies struggling to survive in the darkness between stars. She thought about families broken by exile and children who had never seen their home world. When do we start? She asked. The process began in the Defiance cargo bay. Zara 9 had transformed the space into something that looked part laboratory, part temple. Strange glowing symbols covered the walls, and the air hummed with energy that made everyone's skin tingle. Chun stood with 9 volunteers from her crew. They had argued for hours about who should go first. Everyone wanted to help, but no one knew what the Kethver process would do to them. In the end, Chun had chosen people she trusted completely. Her senior officers and a few younger crew members who reminded her of herself at their age. The bonding will change you, Zara 9 explained as she prepared the strange devices that would link their minds to Kethver knowledge. You will gain our memories, our skills, our understanding of combat and strategy. But more than that, you will be connected to each other in ways your species has never experienced. Lieutenant Torres raised her hand nervously. Will we still be ourselves? Zara 9 smiled gently. You will be more yourselves than you have ever been. The Kethver knowledge will not replace your thoughts or feelings. It will enhance them, strengthen them, help you understand what you are truly capable of. She moved to the first volunteer, Ensign Parker, and placed a device that looked like a silver crown on his head. The device began to glow, and Parker's eyes widened as something incredible happened inside his mind. I can see, he whispered. I can see space battles from centuries ago. I know how to pilot ships I've never seen before. I understand tactics that no human has ever learned. But that was just the beginning. As Zara 9 activated more devices, something unexpected happened. The volunteers didn't just receive Kethver knowledge. They began to share their own experiences with each other. Chun suddenly felt Torres's memories of growing up on a mining station. She experienced Rodriguez's pride in keeping old engines running against impossible odds. She understood Dr. Martinez's desperate determination to heal people with limited supplies. This is not what happened with the Kethvar, Zara 9 said with wonder in her voice. Your species has something we never possessed. You bond with each other naturally. The process is not just giving you our knowledge. It is combining it with your own capacity for connection. As the bonding continued, Chun felt her mind expand in ways she couldn't describe. She had access to 3 centuries of Kethver military wisdom, but filtered through human understanding. She knew how to fight like a Kethver warrior, but with human determination to protect others. More importantly, she could feel her crew. Not just their thoughts, but their emotions, their fears, their hopes. When Torres worried about her sister in the colonies, Chun felt that worry as if it were her own. When Rodriguez pushed himself too hard to keep the ship running, everyone else felt his exhaustion. The connection went both ways. When Chun's determination to never give up flowed through the link, it strengthened everyone else. Her refusal to abandon people in need became part of their shared understanding. "We need to contact the colonies," Chun said as the process completed. "Every human settlement needs to know about this." Over the following weeks, word spread through the scattered human communities faster than any message could travel. The volunteers who had bonded with Kethver knowledge could somehow share their experiences with other humans over vast distances. It wasn't telepathy exactly, but something close to it. On the mining station where Torres had grown up, her sister Maria suddenly felt a warm presence in her mind. Through that connection, she learned everything that had happened. More than that, she gained access to combat knowledge and tactical awareness that could help protect the station from raiders. Similar awakenings happened across dozens of worlds. A farmer on a distant agricultural colony found himself understanding starship engineering. A teacher in an underground city gained knowledge of military strategy. A mechanic fixing old equipment suddenly knew how to repair weapon systems she had never seen. But the knowledge came with something even more valuable: hope. For the first time in 50 years, humans felt connected to each other again. The loneliness and despair that had haunted the exile colonies began to fade as people realized they were not alone. The transformation wasn't limited to combat skills. The Kethver had been explorers and scientists as well as warriors. Their knowledge included advanced mathematics, engineering principles, and scientific understanding that could help human colonies become self-sufficient. On the industrial world of New Pittsburgh, workers used Kethver engineering knowledge to build better life support systems. On the research station at Wolf 359, scientists applied alien mathematical concepts to improve their computer systems. Every human settlement began to grow stronger as the shared knowledge spread. But the most important change was harder to describe. Humans had always been social creatures, but the bonding process enhanced that natural tendency. Connected humans worked together with a coordination that seemed almost magical. They anticipated each other's needs and supported each other's weaknesses without having to speak. Chun watched it happen aboard the Defiant. Her crew moved with new efficiency, each person knowing exactly what the others needed. Rodriguez could tell when Adams needed help with the weapon systems. Torres understood when Parker was struggling with navigation problems. Dr. Martinez felt when someone was injured before they even reported to sick bay. "This is what we always were," Zaranite observed as she watched the transformed humans work together. "Your species has always been pack hunters, family protectors, tribal bonders. The Kethver knowledge simply allows you to express those instincts more clearly." But their transformation did not go unnoticed. Deep in Vorthak space, sensors detected the unusual energy signatures spreading through human space. The Empire's leaders had spent 3 centuries making sure Kethver knowledge would never threaten their control again. High Admiral Kresh studied the reports with growing alarm. The energy patterns were unmistakable. Somehow, impossible as it seemed, the Kethver had returned. But these readings showed something even worse. The knowledge was spreading to humans. "Deploy the 10th Fleet," he commanded. "Find the source of these transmissions and destroy it completely." His subordinates hesitated. The 10th Fleet was their largest battle group, designed for conquering entire star systems. Sir, are we declaring war on the human exile colonies? Presh turned his cold eyes on them. We are preventing a war that could destroy everything we have built. The humans with Kethver knowledge will not remain in exile. They will return to claim their place in the galaxy, and they will bring others with them. The Admiral was right to be afraid. Across human space, the awakened colonies were no longer content to hide in the dark corners between stars. They had knowledge now, and strength, and most importantly, they had each other. Chung felt it through the connection that linked all bonded humans. A growing sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. They had spent 50 years running from the galaxy that cast them out. Now they had the tools to return, but first, they needed to grow stronger. The Kethver knowledge was powerful, but it would take time to fully integrate it with human abilities. They needed to train, to practice, to become worthy of the gift they had received. How long do we have? Chun asked Zara-9. The last Kethver closed her glowing eyes and reached out through the network that connected all awakened humans. She could feel Vorthic ships already moving toward human space. Not long enough, she replied, but perhaps long enough to give the galaxy something it has never seen before. The changes spread faster than anyone expected. Within 2 months, every human settlement had people with Kethver knowledge. But more importantly, they were all connected through the bioneural network that linked their minds across the galaxy. Chun stood in the command center of New Haven, a hidden base built inside a hollow asteroid. What had started as a simple supply depot was now the coordination point for the largest human military operation in 50 years. Around her, displays showed the status of awakened humans on dozens of worlds. Commander, we're getting reports from the Centauri sector, Lieutenant Torres called out. She had been promoted after showing exceptional ability to coordinate through the neural link. 3 more species have asked for our help. Chun nodded. This had been happening all across human space. Alien species living under Vorthic control were reaching out to the human resistance. Word was spreading that humans were sharing some kind of powerful knowledge with anyone willing to stand against the Empire. The first contact had come from a group of Zelani refugees. Their homeworld had been conquered by the Vorthic 20 years ago, and the survivors had been scattered across the galaxy as workers and servants. When they heard that humans were offering hope to the oppressed, they sent a desperate message. Zara-9 had been amazed to discover that many other species were compatible with Kethver knowledge, though none as naturally suited as humans. The Zelani were artistic people who thought in complex patterns. When they bonded with Kethver tactical knowledge, they became incredible strategists who could see battle plans like works of art. After the Zelani came the Koroth, a species of natural engineers who had been forced to build weapons for the Empire. With Kethver scientific knowledge, they could design technologies that the Vorthic had never imagined. Then came the Flith, small insect-like beings who excelled at swarming tactics and coordinated attacks. Each species brought their own strengths to the growing network. But they all shared something important. They were tired of being afraid. Status report on the fleet, Chun ordered. Chief Rodriguez appeared on the main screen from his position aboard the rebuilt Defiant. The old ship had been completely transformed using Kethver engineering knowledge. It was still recognizably human in design, but now it could match any Vorthic warship for speed and firepower. We have 47 ships ready for combat, he reported. Mixed human, Zelani, and Koroth crews. The new neural coordination system is working better than we hoped. Every pilot can anticipate what every other pilot will do. Chun smiled. The coordination was incredible to watch. Ships that should have taken years to learn to work together moved like parts of a single organism. Human emotional intelligence, combined with Kethver tactical knowledge, and alien. Specialized skills created something none of them could have achieved alone. But their growth had not gone unnoticed. Intelligence reports showed Vorthak fleets moving toward human space. The Empire was finally taking the human resistance seriously. Incoming message from High Admiral Kresh, Torres announced. He's broadcasting on all frequencies. The face that appeared on their screens was typical Vorthak, tall, pale, with large black eyes that showed no emotion. Kresh had been the one to orchestrate humanity's exile 50 years ago. Now he was coming to finish what he had started. Humans of the exile colonies. His cold voice echoed through the command center. You have acquired something that does not belong to you. The HFY knowledge is too dangerous for primitive species. Surrender the alien terrorist you rescued, submit to memory modification, and you will be allowed to continue your exile in peace. Chun felt anger flow through the neural network from thousands of awakened humans. Memory modification was a fate worse than death, erasing everything that made a person who they were. He's giving us 48 hours to respond, Torres reported. Chun looked around the command center at the faces of her people. They had come so far from the desperate refugees hiding in the dark between stars. Now they were leaders of a growing rebellion that stretched across the galaxy. Open a channel to all human settlements and allied worlds, she commanded. It's time to give our answer. Her image appeared on screens throughout human space and beyond. On mining stations and agricultural colonies, in hidden bases and refugee camps, humans stopped what they were doing to listen. But Chun's words were also heard by Zilani artists, Koroth engineers, Fliss swarm leaders, and dozens of other species who had joined the growing network. High Admiral Kresh, Chun began, her voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute determination. You gave us an ultimatum. Let me give you one in return. She paused, feeling the strength of every connected mind supporting her words. For 50 years, you've told the galaxy that humans are too dangerous for civilization, that we're too emotional, too unpredictable, too willing to fight for strangers. You were right about all of that. We are dangerous to anyone who thinks that strength should be used to oppress others. The neural network carried her emotions to every awakened human and allied species. They felt her determination, her protective fury, her absolute refusal to abandon the weak. We tried exile. We tried hiding. We tried surviving quietly in the spaces you didn't want. But we're done being afraid. We're human. We don't leave people behind. And now our family is bigger than you can imagine. She gestured to the display showing allied ships gathering in systems across the galaxy. You have 48 hours to begin releasing all enslaved species, dismantling your labor camps, and returning the worlds you've conquered to their rightful owners. If you refuse, you'll discover exactly why you were so afraid of humans with HFY knowledge. The transmission ended, and Chun felt the approval of thousands of connected minds. But she also felt their fear. The Vorthak Empire controlled thousands of worlds and had military forces that dwarfed anything the Resistance could field. Commander, Torres said quietly, our intelligence reports show at least 300 Vorthak warships moving toward our positions. Even with the coordination advantage, we can't match those numbers. Chun nodded. She had known this moment would come since the day they rescued Zara 9. The network had grown incredibly fast, but they were still vastly outnumbered by an empire that had controlled the galaxy for centuries. Then we need to make sure numbers don't matter, she replied. Contact all allied commanders. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you unite people instead of dividing them. Across human and allied space, the final preparations began. Ships that had been built in hidden asteroid bases emerged from concealment. Species that had been scattered by conquest came together for the first time in decades. Most importantly, The neural network that connected them all grew stronger as more minds joined the growing chorus of resistance. Zara 9 found Chun in her quarters as the deadline approached. The last Kethver looked tired but hopeful. "My people fought the Vorthik for 50 years before we fell," she said. "We had superior technology, better tactics, and warriors trained from birth. But we fought alone, each world trying to protect itself." She moved to the window that showed the gathering fleet. Ships of a dozen different designs flew in perfect formation, their crews connected through the neural link. "You have done something the Kethver never could," Zara 9 continued. "You have created unity without uniformity. Each species keeps what makes them unique while sharing what makes them strong." Chun joined her at the window. "Will it be enough?" Zara 9 smiled. "Your species has a saying, doesn't it? That it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." Chun laughed despite the approaching danger. "Something like that. The Vorthik rule through fear and division. They make each species believe they stand alone. Tomorrow, you will show the galaxy something that has never existed before. An army that fights not for conquest or revenge, but for the right of everyone to be free." As the hours counted down to the deadline, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Oppressed species that had heard about the human resistance were rising up on their own worlds. The neural network was carrying hope faster than any warship could travel. The Vorthik Empire was about to face something they had never encountered, not a rebellion of one species, but an awakening of everyone they had ever oppressed. Chun felt it through the network. Millions of minds united by a single belief that no one deserved to live in chains. Tomorrow, the galaxy would change forever. The battle began at exactly noon, Galactic Standard Time. High Admiral Kresh arrived at the coordinates Chun had provided, expecting to find a desperate band of human rebels. Instead, he faced something that shouldn't have been possible. The resistance fleet was waiting in perfect formation. 300 ships from dozens of species, moving with coordination that defied everything the Vorthik knew about space combat. Human cruisers flew alongside Zilani artships and Koroth engineering vessels. Flith swarm fighters darted between larger ships like schools of metal fish. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported with confusion in his voice, "they're not using standard formation patterns. Every ship seems to know what every other ship is going to do before they do it." Kresh studied the enemy fleet through his command ship sensors. He had brought 500 of the Empire's finest warships. Each one was faster, better armed, and more heavily armored than anything the Resistance could field. By every tactical manual ever written, this should be a simple victory. But the sight before him made his cold blood run even colder. The Resistance ships moved like living things, flowing around each other in patterns that seemed organic rather than mechanical. When his fleet opened fire, the enemy vessels responded with perfect coordination. As if controlled by a single mind, Chun stood on the bridge of the Defiant. But her consciousness expanded far beyond the single ship. Through the neural network, she was simultaneously present on every vessel in the fleet. She felt the Zilani commander's artistic vision as he painted battle strategies in three-dimensional space. She experienced the Koroth engineer's mathematical precision as he calculated optimal firing solutions. She shared the Flith swarm leader's instinctive understanding of group tactics. But most importantly, she felt the determination of every human in the fleet. 50 years of exile had not broken them. It had taught them to value freedom above all else. "Begin Phase 1, she commanded. And her order flowed instantly to every ship through the neural link. The Resistance fleet scattered in directions that looked completely random to Vorthik sensors. But Chun could feel the hidden pattern. Each ship was moving to a precise position calculated by the combined intelligence of all connected minds. Within minutes, The Vorthik fleet found themselves surrounded by enemies who knew exactly where to strike. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a new star. Vorthik energy beams met human kinetic weapons and Zilani plasma cannons. Ships on both sides took damage, but something strange was happening. When a resistance vessel was hit, nearby ships immediately moved to protect it. When a human ship's shields failed, a Koroth engineering vessel appeared to provide cover while repairs were made. Admiral Kresh watched his tactical display with growing alarm. His ships outnumbered the enemy, but they were fighting as individuals while the resistance moved as a single organism. Every time he tried to concentrate fire on one target, the enemy formation shifted to protect it. "Target their command ship," he ordered. "If we can disrupt their coordination." But there was no command ship. The neural network meant that leadership was distributed through the entire fleet. Chen was the overall commander, but tactical decisions were being made by whoever had the best understanding of each local situation. When Vorthik ships tried to break through the resistance lines, they met Flith swarm fighters that moved with impossible precision. When they attempted to outmaneuver the enemy, Zilani commanders anticipated every move with artistic intuition. When they tried to overwhelm resistance ships with superior firepower, Koroth engineers had already calculated the most vulnerable points in Vorthik armor. But the real shock came when Kresh realized that the battle was being broadcast throughout the galaxy. Every enslaved world was watching as the mighty Vorthik fleet struggled against a coalition of species they had oppressed for centuries. "Sir," his communications officer reported urgently, "we're getting reports of uprisings on 17 worlds. The local populations are attacking our garrison forces." Kresh felt his carefully ordered empire beginning to crumble. The neural network wasn't just coordinating the resistance fleet. It was carrying hope to oppressed populations across the galaxy, inspiring them to rise up against their rulers. On the mining world of Kepler-7, human colonists who had lived in fear for 50 years emerged from their underground shelters. But they weren't alone. Through the neural network, they shared tactical knowledge with awakened humans fighting in space. A retired teacher became an expert in urban warfare. A young Meyer gained the combat experience of Kethver warriors who had fought centuries ago. Similar uprisings erupted across the galaxy. The Vorthik had built their empire by keeping each species isolated and afraid. But the neural network connected all the resistance movements, allowing them to coordinate their efforts across impossible distances. Back in space, the battle was turning against the Empire. Kresh had lost nearly a third of his fleet, while the resistance continued to fight with undiminished coordination. Every Vorthik ship that fell weakened their formation, while every resistance vessel that survived made the network stronger. The Admiral, his second-in-command, said quietly, "Perhaps we should consider retreat. We can return with a larger force." "No," Kresh replied firmly. "If we retreat now, every oppressed species in the galaxy will see it as proof that we can be defeated. The Empire will collapse within months." He was right, but he had already lost. The neural network gave the resistance advantages that no traditional military force could match. They fought not as separate ships following orders, but as parts of a single organism devoted to protecting freedom. Chun felt the moment when the tide turned completely. Through the network, she sensed the fear beginning to spread through the Vorthik fleet. They were facing something their rigid military doctrine had never prepared them for. An enemy that grew stronger through cooperation instead of competition. "Begin Phase 2, she commanded. The resistance fleet suddenly changed tactics. Instead of fighting a traditional space battle, they began to demonstrate something that made Kresh's blood freeze. Ships that should have been enemies started working together with impossible efficiency. Human vessels shared shield power with damaged Koroth ships. Zilani commanders coordinated attacks that protected Flith swarms. Most unnervingly, when Vorthik ships were disabled instead of destroyed. Resistance crews boarded them not to capture them, but to free any enslaved beings they found aboard. They're not trying to conquer us, Kresh realized with growing horror. They're trying to convert us. It was true. Every contact with the Resistance showed Vorthak crews something they had never experienced: cooperation without domination. Some began to question why they were fighting to preserve an empire that ruled through fear. The final blow came when Zara Tanine herself appeared on the battlefield. She had taken command of a small ship crewed entirely by volunteers from different species. As she moved through the combat zone, her presence in the neural network reached out to every mind it touched. Even some Vorthik felt it. The gentle touch of a consciousness that offered knowledge and connection instead of demanding submission. For beings who had lived their entire lives in a rigid hierarchy, the experience was overwhelming. 3 Vorthik ships simply stopped firing and requested permission to surrender. Then 5 more. Then entire squadrons began to lay down their weapons, as their crews experienced what it felt like to be part of something greater than themselves. Admiral Kresh found himself commanding a fleet that was dissolving before his eyes, not through defeat, but through conversion. His officers were feeling what it was like to share knowledge instead of hoarding it, to protect others instead of dominating them. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, and Kresh heard something in the young Vorthik's voice that had never been there before: hope. Perhaps we should consider joining them. Kresh looked around his bridge at faces that no longer showed the cold obedience he was used to. His crew was experiencing emotions they had been taught to suppress: compassion, wonder, the desire to belong to something greater than themselves. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kresh faced a choice that his training had never prepared him for. He could fight to the bitter end defending an empire built on oppression, or he could join something that offered freedom to everyone, even former enemies. The battle ended not with the destruction of the Vorthik fleet, but with its absorption into the growing network of free minds. Ships that had arrived as conquerors departed as allies, their crews connected to the neural link that promised equality and cooperation. 6 months later, Chun stood on the observation deck of New Earth Station, humanity's first permanent base in civilized space. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from 100 different worlds coming and going in peaceful cooperation. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Vorthik Empire had dissolved as world after world chose to join the growing network of free species, not through